I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. I'm joined as I am every week by my good friend David Bozell for America. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You know, when I was a kid, I used to love to get autographs from my favorite baseball players. Hank Aaron was my absolute favorite. And my brother was older than me, and my brother had gotten his genuine autograph before Hank became the biggest thing in the universe. Nowadays, players sometimes they get so much demand if you play for the Yankees or the Red Sox or someone that an Autopen is used. It's a machine where they actually have digitally recorded the autograph of player X. They put a pen in the machine, and so there is an actual Sharpie being used, but it's not the player. He will send out pictures with his autograph, but it's not really the player signing it. That's okay if you're a professional baseball player, but it seems we now know that Joe Biden, the president of the United States for 4 years, was using an Autopen to sign off on a number of things, including pardons and bills. Is this an issue to you?
Not in the macro. I'm going to disappoint some of my right wing friends when I say that. I don't mind if presidents use auto pens for certain things, so long as the president knows that the auto pen is being used for those certain things. And that is the question that President Trump is trying to drum up and trying to get an answer to, and perhaps get the media, get the courts to look into this. I laughed out loud when Caitlin Collins was trying to at the White House press briefing and asking, does the president really think that Joe Biden used an auto pen, and what difference does that make, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not the point. The point is for Caitlin Collins to go find out whether or not President Biden knew that his signature was being used in such ways. And there's a real easy way to do that. You just call him up in Delaware and figure it out and get an answer on the record as to whether or not he knew. If he knew, I don't think it's a huge deal. If he didn't, that becomes the big question, and that's where the courts would need this. Probably the Supreme Court would need to jump in and decide whether or not these pardons and some of these last-minute executive orders are even legit.
I think there's two issues at play here. One is the issue of Joe Biden's competency. And did his staff know, were they fully aware that he was incompetent, that he was unable to even affix his own signature to a document with any mental acuity, and they had to use a machine? Because if that's the case, the American public were duped for some period of time, 4 years or less. And so that's a major issue. But the second part of this is, I'm going to disagree with you. I think it does matter. It doesn't matter if you're sending a letter out. You know, it's, for example, when troops die, the president sends a personal letter to each individual family. And so George Bush was famous for not only signing the letter, but writing in the column. He would write some personal notes. Gosh, I'm really sorry about this and that. He would look up things about the individual members. Barack Obama used an auto pen. Now, it's a ceremonial item. The letter is a ceremonial item. But the fact that Barack Obama used an auto pen, I remember being shocked at the time, thinking, wow, these are people that literally gave their life, and you don't even have the time to sign your name. So that was shocking, but it's not illegal. It's a ceremonial piece of paper. I would disagree, however, if you have a pardon or you have a bill that was passed. The Constitution requires the signature of the President of the United States, his actual signature, not a facsimile, not a machine doing it for him. The president has to sign off on that item. So I think you can make a legal argument, a very strong legal argument, that anything that was not signed by the president, if there was a bill that went into effect, but he didn't really sign it, a machine did, that bill is null and void. I think there is a huge can of worms here.
Well, I mean, let's hash that out in the courts. There are differences between correspondence, pieces of legislation, pardons, etc. I think Jimmy Carter pardoned tens of thousands of people, after the Vietnam War. How are you going to make him do that? And I mean, that's got to be a facsimile. He's just not going to. I don't think we want our presidents, if it's going to be such in high quantity, Tim. I just don't know if I want my president sitting there behind a desk doing that in such high quantity. But if you're doing it without, I mean, one of the big questions is if the staff knew that the president didn't know or wasn't aware or even didn't agree, what's the penalty for the staff? I mean, I remember being in third grade. Okay, I forgot to turn in my field trip permission form. There was a little line from my mother, and the call was made. Did you bring in your permission form? And so I hastily wrote "Mom" in the permission form instead of her name because I was third grade. I didn't know what I was doing. In detention, I mean, that was my penalty, right? I got in big trouble for that because I forged her name. But I really wonder, I mean, the senior White House staff, if they were pardoning Anthony Fauci and the J6 committee without the president's knowledge or permission, boy, oh boy, yes, absolutely. But again, I challenge the press to figure this out. I don't think that the current Trump administration, unless they've got records proving that Biden didn't know, I don't know if I want the current Trump administration spending a lot of time investigating on their own.
Here's the great irony is, if you recall the last year of Biden's presidency, there was denial after denial after denial that he was incompetent. No, even the media, the left-wing media was saying he's at the top of his game. I met with him. He's as sharp as he's ever been. Here's the great irony is now, what better way for them to evade any trouble than to go to Joe Biden and say, were you aware? And he can go, I don't know. And there's nothing anyone can do. He can now be declared incompetent, and that works in their favor.
Right. Well, like what would Robert Hur say about this? Right. He put in his deposition notes that the president clearly wasn't with it and clearly had a poor recollection of events as it related to his classified files situation. So, would Robert Hur have something to say about this? Is there a way to get Biden under oath in a deposition, format? I mean, but I think that's got to require third-party litigation. Or a third-party investigation from the media. I just hesitate to sort of burden the current Trump White House with trying to figure that out on its own, because even if they thought they had the goods, people are going to question the messenger.
I think there should be an injunction against any and every action item that Joe Biden signed for 4 years.
Sure, that too. We can do that too. I'm game for that. Ukraine funding never happened.
He is David Moselle. I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. Thanks for joining us.